بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. باب السلم. So salam, this is another form of transaction which was permitted by the Prophet ﷺ, and salam is practiced by the modern sort of Islamic financing companies, businesses, banks. So salam literally means to hand over. Yeah, salama, to hand something over. And salam technically should not be allowed, because salam is where, for example, like, let's say Shakil is a farmer. He's got a farm, grows apples, and Imtiaz wants 100 kilos of apples. The apples are going to be ready in May. So Imtiaz, from now, he wants to book it, because he knows if someone else comes and takes it, he's going to lose his apples and he won't be able to sell them to customers. So what Imtiaz does is he pays Shakil, and that's what you pay the money, and then when the date comes, the goods will be delivered to you later. So this is different from a normal transaction. Normal transaction, goods are supposed to be given there and then. Yeah, where they're here, it's necessary for the goods to be given later. So technically, are the apples there? Have they grown? I mean, they're going to be apples in the world, but are there apples grown in Shakil's orchard? No, they won't. So because the apples would not have grown, what happens? Technically, this shouldn't be allowed, because he's selling something which he doesn't have. And we said before, something which doesn't exist or doesn't have, you can't sell it. So this should not be allowed. So there is a rule in usul fiqh, which is this, that when there's a theory that has been set, because our fiqh is just based on theories that are laid out in the Quran, theories that are laid out in the Sunnah by the Sahaba. Yeah, like we got theories like actions are by intentions. That's a concept. Or something like anything impure that comes out your body breaks your wudu. That's a theory that they've come out with based upon looking at the texts. So the rule is that a theory, if you have a theory, this theory is not broken. Yeah, you have to follow the theory through in everything. Everything that applies in. Unless a stronger evidence counters that theory. So if this theory is countered by a stronger piece of evidence, what happens? Yeah, so for example, like, the theory is that we're not allowed to eat pork. Anything that's made from pork, we can't eat it. But what if you're starving, you're dying, and the only thing to eat is pork? Then what? So you break that. This concept in usul fiqh is a very important concept, because this shows that we give preference to the stronger evidence. So even though we have theorized this rule, if a stronger evidence comes to us, we're ready to leave that theory and take the evidence. Like, another example is in salat, you guys have done. Technically, the only thing that should break your wudu are the 7 things. Yeah, impurity coming out of your body should break your wudu. So therefore, why does laughter break your wudu in salat? There's no impurity coming out. But we say, because there's a clear hadith about this, then we can't ignore the hadith. So we're willing to break our rule that we've devised because of strong evidence. So this is known as istihsan. It's known as istihsan. Yeah, so istihsan is prevalent throughout Hanafi fiqh, and it's found in other fiqhs in different forms. So salam should not be allowed according to the theory, because you are selling something which you don't really possess. It doesn't exist. It's bay'al ma'doom, they say, selling something which is non-existent. Apples haven't grown yet. Yet already you paid for the apples of May. Yeah. However, because the Prophet ﷺ, he allowed the transaction of salam. He allowed it. So now what's happened? Yeah, because this is allowed, this is permitted. So this is what we call istihsan through a narration. Istihsan. So you can have istihsan through a verse of the Quran, like the permissibility of eating pork at the time of starvation. You can have istihsan through a narration, like this. And you can have istihsan through other means as well. Yeah.
So istihsan will actually mean breaking of the theory.
Yeah, so istihsan, literally istihsan means seeing something good. So the expert, the jurist, he sees that this evidence is better in this scenario, in this case, than the evidence that they've been using so far. Yeah. So the rule of istihsan is like a few rules for istihsan, and you'll study this when you study usul fiqh next year. You'll study this. The rule for istihsan is this: is that it's restricted to the context of its application. So wherever it's applied, you can only apply it there and nowhere else. You can't like further extend it. So you can't say something like, well, if it's allowed here, then we can allow it also in this masala and like this masala. You can't do that. So it's like you can only use it in that specific scenario that's applied in. So that's why in the salat thing, issue, we say laughter in janazah won't break your janazah salat, because this rule only came in a normal salat, didn't come in janazah. So likewise, this rule can only apply in salam. You don't find it anywhere else. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is salam. Now in salam, you need to know some names. So who's selling the apples? Okay, so you got Shakil here. And who's got the money? So Imtiaz, the customer, he's called the Rabbul Mal. Yeah, the guy that owns the wealth, the guy that owns the cash. It's the customer. Shakil is known as the Muslim ilayhi. Yes, the Muslim ilayhi.
Muslim.
Yeah, Muslim ilayhi. The item, the apples, which will be ready in May, are known as the Muslim fihi. The salam is done in that thing, in the apples. And he's called the Muslim ilayhi because it's to him.
What was the item's called, sorry?
Muslim fihi. Everyone got that? Yeah. And the wealth is called what? Ra'sul Mal, the capital. So you got four things in this transaction. You got the customer, you got the seller, you got the commodity, and they're just giving him different names. It's just mushtari by the same names. It's just like mubtada and khabar. Yeah. When the inna comes on, you call it ism inna. Still the mubtada. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, what kind of things can you do salam in? So you can't do salam in everything, right? That's one thing you have to remember. You can only do salam in those things that can be exactly quantified. So what kind of things can you exactly quantify? Things are measured in cups, liters, milliliters, weights, and things which are small, similar, and can be counted. Yeah, so apples come under that. They can be counted. Yeah, roughly the same size. You don't get like on one tree, one really massive and a big difference between the sizes. So these are the three types that they mention. As-salamu jaizun fil makilat. Things that are measured by cups in today's times. Things that are measured in liters.
Ustad, when they say there's no difference from that particular tree, or does it mean, because like for example bananas in
Yeah, because you're going to be ordering of a specific type, aren't you? Wal mawzunat, weight, and ma'dudat. Therefore, what kind of things can't you do salam in? You can't do salam in things which are a big difference. Yeah, like a house, or like cars, or like animals. Yeah, things where there's going to be a big difference. You can't do salam in there. Salam doesn't apply there. So it has to be done in these kind of things, because remember, you're going to be ordering something in May. So therefore, how does he know he's got to get the exact thing that you asked for? It needs to be something that can be empirically measured. Yes, so if it can't be empirically measured, if it's not something which you can quantify exactly, that he's going to get upset. If he says, for example, I want 5 cows in May. Okay, you got 5 cows. You go, no, I don't want these ones. But if he says, I want 100 kilos of apples, and he knows which apples, he gives the exact type and brand and everything. So when he gets those apples, you know, last year's apples are exactly the same as this year's apples if you get the same brand.
So is it mainly just food items then? I'm saying.
Yeah, mainly food, and you can also do it in other things which are weighed and measured as well.
What about cars? They're quite specific.
Yeah, cars come under something else.
Okay.
Yeah, these come under something else.
So can I just ask, you said this theory is, shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah.
So what's may be allowed within the
Hadith,
hadith?
yeah.
Just the others.
Okay, everyone got that? Right, so things like you said, things that are not edible, like for example, cloth. Yeah? So if you make a cloth that's exactly the same. Yeah? So remember we said cloth in the olden days. But there was some cloth that could be made exactly the same. It's like nowadays we have. Someone orders cloth. You say, I want some cloth in May. You give exact specs. Right, I want this type of cloth, cotton from Egypt. And then you go, okay. How much do you want? I want 5 reams of it. Fine, okay, it'll be done, don't worry. So then he's booked it, it's ordered, and he's going to deliver it to you. Yeah, so you can do in makilat, mawzunat, ma'dudat. Allati, the ma'dudat, which don't differ, la tatafawut. Like what? Like joes. Yeah, so nuts. Joes is, you know, like walnuts. Yeah, so they're roughly the same. Or even like other nuts as well that we have nowadays. Well bathed eggs. Eggs are roughly the same size. You know, when you go to the shops and you buy a crate of eggs, right? They're roughly the same size. You get 6 eggs, you get 12 dozen eggs. You look at them. Some will be smaller than others, but they'll have like, these are large ones, these are medium ones. And if you do measure them, you will find differences. But they're acceptable. Because people will not argue over these things. Remember we said before, transaction that leads to an argument, to a dispute, what happens? It's not allowed. Wal madru'at, and things which are measured by dhar, by cubits. Yeah, and that refers to cloth and other things like that. Carpet as well. You can even come under that. Okay, what kind of things can't you do? You cannot do salam in haywan. Why can't you do haywan? Like we just said. You cannot do salam in the limbs of the animals. Yeah, like you want, for example, like in your shop, you're a butcher's and you want to sell the hind legs of animals. Or you want to sell, you know, the front shoulder of the animal. Or you want to sell the belly of an animal. So you can't sell these you can't order them. Because again, you're not going to get the specs that you want. You might get animal and it might be, you know, weak, and you're looking for a strong, big animal. No, what about animals' hides? Again, this isn't something that's something that's the same. It's going to differ quite a lot.
So you know, like sometimes my father will order the meat and then I'll go pick it up and he's paid for it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that not the same?
No, because that's not salam.
Okay.
Yeah, salam is something that has to be done at a later date. And according to Hanafis, it's going to come 1 month.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Besides that, like if you order meat, if you guys the guy, you've made the transaction already, and you've agreed you're going to pay the money later on.
No, Dad usually pays the money and then I'll just.
And then that's fine. So then it's just like going to the shops, paying the money, and say I'll pick up the goods later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's still the normal transaction that we're doing.
Okay.
Remember, in a normal transaction, you can pay credit, and you can also pick up the item at a delayed date. But legally, the transaction would have been contracted on that particular time when you agreed.
So this salam is anything longer than a month?
According to Hanafis, according to the Malikis and others, they say no, it can be less than a month.
Okay, so if I was to pick up the meat a month later, then this wouldn't be allowed?
No, then that would still be, that wouldn't come under salam. It wouldn't come under salam. It'd come under the normal transaction.
Okay.
This is, for example, like if you say something like this, like I want to pre-order this kind of meat. Yeah, so that would be a normal transaction. It wouldn't come under, the laws of salam wouldn't apply to it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Like for example, look, like if I exchange money for money, right? If I say to you, okay, have you got a pound? I need some change. Yeah, I got some change. Yeah, so you give change. Even though you think that's just a good act of goodwill, it's actually a transaction you've done. You're not calling it a transaction, are you?
No.
But the laws of transaction apply to it. If something was to happen and you were to take him to court, the judge will look at it under the rules of transaction, of riba, sarf. It's going to come. Make sense?
Yeah.
So sometimes you might see a transaction occurring between two people. You might be thinking, well, what's the difference between this and that? So the judge will look at it and say, look, the laws of this transaction can't apply to this, so we can't treat it like this.
Okay.
So what we do is we give it the laws of a transaction which can be applicable to it. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So, وَلَا فِي الْجُلُودِ عَدَدًا. And this is why the hardest thing in financial transactions is, this is what you're talking about, is when someone brings a transaction to you and then he says to you, is this allowed in Islam or not? You have the duty to go and look through all the fiqh and try to take out from fiqh which one this transaction applies to. For example, like if you buy something on Amazon, is that allowed in Islam or not? Why is it allowed? What does it come under? What is it?
Normal transaction.
Yeah, so you how do you know that though? No, you gotta think about it. So you say, okay, because in a normal transaction, goods are being transferred from one side to the other. One side you have cash, the other side you have a commodity. Both sides have agreed to this. The transaction has been done instantaneously, and you're waiting for the goods, so the goods are going to be delivered at a later date. It's a normal transaction. Does that make sense? If it's a transaction, for example, like someone said this, okay, there's a guy who wants to sell me his car, and he said to me that he's going to sell his car. He bought his car for 2,000, he's going to sell it for 2,500 to me. What kind of transaction is that? No.
That's the one for the profit.
Profits. Yeah, murabaha. That's a murabaha, that is. So you see,
Total price, that's what.
yeah, because so you got to know these details in the transaction, because if it goes to court, each one can have different consequences. So you got to know these things. Okay, everyone understand that? Right. What other things can't you do transactions in? Like we said, things that cannot be quantified, you can't do transactions in there, or where there's going to be a big difference. So let's say, for example, a bundle of wood. Can Imtiaz say to Shakil, in December it's going to be winter, and I really need 20 kilos of wood. Would it come under Salam? It might come under something else, but not Salam. Yeah? Would it come under Salam? Why? Because again, what kind of wood? And then wood's not all the same. So in them days, they didn't have machinery to be able to cut the wood in the right shapes. So wala fil hatab huzman. Yeah, huzman, bundles. Wala fi rutba juruzan. So rutba is like vegetables. Yeah, so vegetables in bundles. Like you get parsley and you get coriander and you get tomatoes and you get other things in bundles. Because again, just like you go to the shop and you see a bundle, you look at the bundle of coriander and you think, what, I don't want this one, it's too small. Or look at this one and you see it's got some, green, yellow leaves in there, I don't want this one. Yeah, so imagine the coriander comes to you in May and you go, well, this is not what I want, this looks dead. You're going to get upset. Yeah, it's going to cause an argument. I don't want this. Then if you say I don't want this, who is he going to sell it to? He actually grew all of these just for you because you ordered it. So now you're seeing how important this is. And we don't understand this because we don't really deal in Salam that much. Big companies deal in Salam. Salam is done by big manufacturers, wholesalers. They have to order things in large quantities, cash and carries. It's not just like a few crates of tomatoes. They have to order like loads of tomatoes. And if the guys in the shops don't pre-order them, or they're not going to buy off them, then it's going to go to waste. Okay, so what's the rule? There has to be some rules which enable Salam to go through. So yes, there are some rules. So these are some of the rules now. So number one, the first rule is this. So we've mentioned some rules before, but these are like the rules to initiate it. The first thing is this, is that the commodity, what do you call the commodity? Muslim fee. The Muslim fee here, what we said, the apples, in May, they have to exist in the markets. Not Imtiaz's apples, because they obviously haven't grown yet. but there has to be in the markets a presence of that commodity. This is according to the Hanafis. Other madhabs, they say no, it doesn't really matter. They don't have to be in the markets at that time.
So if it's a fruit, it has to be like in season.
So there has to be like that kind of fruit in the markets available. It can't be something that used to exist at one time, and now we don't know if they'll come into existence or not.
No, but just say that for like, just say if you want to order mangoes for
Yeah.
summertime, they're not going to be there now.
Yeah. So then the time period when you order them, you have to order them in a time where they are there in the markets.
Okay.
So therefore, you'd have to order them near June time. Make sense? Whereas the other madhabs, they say no, you don't. They don't need to exist in the markets, as long as it's something the other person can supply. That's the main thing. And this is Mufti Taqi Usmani actually says in today's times, this is the more practical opinion. To take what the other madhabs say, because it's very difficult nowadays sometimes. Yeah, because like you just said, mangoes for now, for example, it's a big competition. So people were ordering mangoes from Pakistan, from India, from these places, and 6 months before. So they've got a connection, and the supplier knows he can guarantee that his customers will buy off him. Yeah, and he can't wait like just 1 month before. Okay, so وَلَا يَجُوزُ السَّلَمْ. Salam is not permitted. حَتَّى يَكُونَ الْمُسْلَمْ فِيهِ, the commodity, مَوْجُودًا مِنْ حِينِ الْعَقْدِ, at the time of contracting their contract. إِلَى حِينِ الْمَحَلِ, all the way until the item is delivered. Yeah, so when is the item delivered? May. So from now, March, all the way till May, there has to be this fruit or whatever you're buying. It has to exist in the markets. The reason simply for this is because we don't want something which the supplier can't provide. It's like a risk. You're taking a risk here. Yeah, he's saying to it might be a certain type of fruit which the guy can't guarantee that it's going to come into existence. Yeah, so if it's something like that, a risky sort of a venture, it's going to cause harm for the guy. Make sense? Number 2, وَلَا يَصِحُ السَّلَمْ إِلَّا مُؤَجَّلًا. Like I said before, you cannot do salam unless it is with delayed. Delayed what? Delayed supply. The supply of the commodity has to be delayed. The money has to be given upfront. Yeah, money upfront. Supply of the item has to be delayed. If it's not delayed, like if I go to Tesco and I ask for something, ask for 100 kilos of apples, is that salam? No, it's a normal transaction. So the rules of normal transaction would apply to it.
So how did you translate a bit before Hinil Mahri?
At the time of delivery. Okay. Now this time period, like we said, when are the 100 kilos of apples going to be delivered? When? May. When May? May is 30 days, isn't it? So when in May?
You have to specify.
Yeah, you got it exactly. Yeah, exactly. You have to say when in May. So you say, okay, the 25th of May. Yeah, 25th of May, exact date, and maybe nowadays even exact time. You got to specify that. Why? Because he needs to know, Imtiaz needs to know exactly when he's getting it. Because he might have customers who are ready to buy it, and he doesn't want to wait a week or 2 or 3 weeks.
Does it matter if it comes earlier?
As long as, on that particular date, that's the date that he has to provide it. And if you can't provide it on that date, then you can take him to court. Okay. So, وَلَا يَجُوزُ إِلَّا بِأَجَلٍ مَعْلُومٍ. Salam is not permitted except with a known time. May the 25th. Okay. Let's say, for example, Imtiaz goes to Shakil and he says to Shakil, I need some apples, in May. And he goes, how much do you need? He goes, how much can you provide? And Imtiaz says, this sack over here, I've got 100 of these sacks. Yeah, this bag I've got here, 100 of these bags I can provide you. That's not allowed. Why is it not allowed?
You can't quantify the sack.
Because?
You don't know how many you're going to make or...
No, forget that. I mean, sometimes you don't need to know the exact weight or something. As long as you're happy,
You can't see.
Like, let's say you don't know what a kilo is, and he shows you a kilo.
Oh, I see.
Yeah? But why can't you use a bag that he has? No one else has got this bag, by the way. So only he's got it.
It's not measured or it's not.
Is it
Because
specific to him?
if this bag gets lost from now until May, transactions nullified. Because how is he gonna replicate that bag if he's got only one? Whereas a unit of measure is something which is known in the markets. Everyone knows what kilos are. Everyone knows what liters are. Everyone knows what pounds are. Everyone knows what these things are. But a specific measure which only the Muslim ilayhi has, the shopkeeper has, can't do that. So again the Sharia looks at the risk. So there's a risk here. So he says, وَلَا يَجُوزُ إِلَّا بِأَجَلِ مَا وَلَا يَجُوزُ السَّلَمْ. Salam is not permitted. بِمِكْيَال, with a cup of a particular man, specifically, that only he has, no one else has. وَلَا بِذِرَاءِ رَجُلٍ بِعِينِهِ. No, with the zira', for example. Imtiaz goes to Shakil, I need some cloth. He goes, how much you need? I need like lots. Shakil goes, my arm, I can give you 100 of these. Again, why isn't that allowed?
Different size arms.
Yeah, his arm. He might know his arm. Look at it. Say, okay, that's fine. But again, you can't guarantee that he will be there. Yeah. Or if he uses someone else's arm, maybe something might happen to him. Maybe he might lose his arm. Then how are you going to measure it? So it has to be something which is known in the markets, a measure that you can't argue with, can't be disputed. وَلَا بِذِرَاءِ رَجُلٍ بِعَيْنِهِ. Okay. Another thing you can't do is this. For example, like Imtiaz wants to buy these apples and he says, Shakil, I want 100 apples on the 25th of May, but I want it from Small Heath. The apples are grown in Small Heath, that particular village. I want it from there. I don't want you to get me apples from Spark Hill. I don't want you to get me apples from Moseley or anywhere else. From Small Heath. Right? That's not allowed. Why is that not allowed? Because see, he's a supplier, isn't he? Yeah? Now he might have several farms, or he might have several of his own contacts where he gets them grown. And sometimes what happens, and if you're a farmer, you can't guarantee that one part of the farm or one area will have produce. You might get nothing. That's how the weather works. You could get it, you could not get it. So he can give a brand, he can say to him, I want this brand of apples. Yeah, but he can't say to him where he wants it from. So he can't specify the region that he wants. Like a small region. If it's like a big region, obviously then he can. Pakistani mangoes. Yeah, okay, that's fine. But specific region, you can't do that because again there's risk that they might not have good weather, they might not have good rains and things might not grow.
So do you know when you say you can specify something if it's counted? Just say if you don't weigh the item, just say if you're for apples, where you say you want 10 boxes and the person knows the box size and it's like can you do that because you're counting the 10 boxes?
As long as you guys know what a box is, as long as it's known in the market what a box is, that's fine.
If someone's going to buy something in the market, like the traders, they don't buy it on weight, they buy it in boxes.
I don't know, do they?
No, they do. They
box
buy
by
it
weight
in-
is usually.
No, I'm sure it's by weights.
by weight.
They'll have everything written down in weights.
The
See,
box may be standard, but it'll have 10 kilos or 50 kilos.
See, the thing is, what tends to happen is when we're not accustomed to a particular field of how the world works, we kind of come out with some suggestions which might not really be the reality. So like for example, Sajid Bhai, he's into wholesale, he's into that. So he'll know stuff we don't know about. He might be able to tell us things, this is how we work. And there might be certain things that we're used to, but he might say, sometimes what I do is there'll be a customer and he has to pay me up front beforehand before I can give him stuff. Or he might say, there might be a customer, I only take money from him if he sells something. Yeah, there could be different ways people buy and people sell things. We don't know. And there might be ways that you deal with things, dentistry. There might be certain customers, the way you take fees off them, might be like an upfront fee. It might be they pay monthly and then, that's how it works. You provide the service, they can come in anytime. Okay. So, وَلَا فِي طَعَامِ قَرْيَةٍ بِعَيْنِهَا وَلَا فِي ثَمَرَةِ نَخْلٍ بِعَيْنِهَا. If there's a particular tree, Imtiaz got let's say he's got 1,000 trees, And Imtiaz goes, right, I want apples from this tree, this tree, this tree, marks them all with spray paint. Yeah, only these trees. Why is that not allowed?
Might not grow there.
Again, there's a risk that these will not grow. So if these don't grow, what happens? Yeah, again, it's just called argument. He's gonna say, May's gonna come, he's gonna say, where's my apples? He goes, sorry, you chose these trees. These trees actually got cut down. Yeah, someone came to our garden and cut them down. Yeah, so remember, transactions all about confidence. You need to be able to create confidence between buyer and seller, and that's what governments try to do as well. Yeah, they try to create confidence in the markets. Okay, now Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and the Sahibain, they have these conditions. They all agree on 5 conditions that you must have in Salam, like when you're doing the order. So if you've got an order form, so Imtiaz is filling in the form now. There's 5 things that they both agree that you have to fill in. Like, these are the starred, fill in the blanks. He's got to fill them in. And Imam Abu Hanifa adds 2 extra to these. So Imam Hanifa's altogether got 7, and Sahibain have only 5. Yeah, these are the must. If you want Salam contract to be fulfilled, you need to fill these in.
So, on there's 6 listed here, there's 5 numbered from a particular village. Is that now a condition?
No, so those are just generally to do with Salam.
Okay.
Those are generally to do with the permissibility of Salam. These are to do with the exact conditions that are in the contract.
Okay.
So what are they? Okay, number 1. First of all, we're going to do the 7 of Imam Hanifa's, and then the ones that Sahibain don't agree with, we'll cut those off. So number 1, in the form, imagine this, you have to mention the genus of what you want. Do you want apples? Do you want oranges? Do you want bananas? What do you want? So what does Imtiaz want? Yeah, apples. So he's got to mention. He can't just say, I want fruit. What can't he say, I want fruit?
Uncertain.
Yeah, uncertain. Okay, number 2, he has to mention the type that he wants. What kind of apples? Because we know there's many different varieties of apples. So he's a apple provider, so he needs to know which type of apples is, there's like, they say, if you were to eat one type of apple in the world every single day, different type every day, it would take you 20 years, to finish. Imagine that. There are so many different types of apples in the world. So he's got to mention the type. Number 3, in the column, in the list, he has to also mention the quality of apples, because sometimes, you're a shopkeeper. You have the high quality, good quality ones. You have the medium quality ones. You have the low quality ones. Just like, if you go to Saudi Arabia and you go buy dates, they'll show you dates. These are the really good quality dates. These are the medium quality dates. These are low quality dates. And then, you buy whichever ones you need it for. Like if you're, for example, if you're going to bake a cake, you're not going to need high quality apples. Yeah, for baking a pie or something. So you might just want to use medium quality ones. But for high quality ones, you might want to put them for guests. So it's different.
But how is quality kind of measured? Is it just
So everyone, the markets know it.
Okay.
Markets would know.
It'd
Yeah.
be the same for size in that. So if you had sort of medium-sized apples, and it's known what a medium apple is.
I mean, if there's a
Or like eggs, for
if
example.
there's a specific, I think if there's a specific brand,
Mm.
then the sizes are roughly the same.
Mm.
Okay, so that next. So how much is so far? Jints.
Three.
Yeah, no sifa. Okay, number 4 is how much do you want now? So he's got to fill in the box. How much does he want?
100 kilos.
Yeah, 100 kilos. Okay. Number 5, when does he want him? Exact date. March, May the 25th. Puts it in. So how much is this? This is 5. Right, now besides this, Imam Hanifa says 2 more things he's got to fill in. Sahibain don't agree with these 2 things. What is, how much money are you going to hand over to him? Basically, how much are you going to pay? What's been agreed? So Imam Hanifa says you have to mention this Ra'sul Mal. So let's say, for example, he's going to pay £200. Yeah? Or, I don't know, 500, 300 pounds. Yeah? Very expensive apples. And Sahibain say the contract will go through, but you don't have to stipulate it in the contract of how much money you're going to give. That's something you agree verbally, but you don't. That's not something which will make the contract valid or invalid. Yeah, The contract is not based on that. Just like a normal transaction when you go to the shop. If you buy a Mars bar, you don't have to say to the person how much you're paying. Yeah.
Could this Ustad be the deposit or does he have to pay the full
No,
amount?
he's got to pay the full amount there and then. According to the most mazhabs, they say you have to pay. Malikis, they say you can have a few days delay. Yeah, but you got to pay in salam all of it. Everyone got that? Okay. So he says that, and the final one is Imam Hanifa says that if the item has weight, is a weighty item, yeah. So for example, like if it's 100 kilos, you also got to mention in the contract where you want them delivered. Why is that?
Might deliver it, might say,
Going
"Oh, pick
to
it up or
transport
something."
it.
Yeah, because depending on, if he says to you, okay, you got to pick it up from Devon, you got to go all the way there, you got to get transport, you got to pick it up, take out time, it's going to cost you. But if he says, okay, I want it delivered to me at my house, or at my warehouse, or at my shop, and these are things that can lead to an argument as well if you think about it. Where the May the 25th has come now, he's saying, where's my stuff? He goes, oh, your stuff's in France. You know what I mean, France? Yeah. Okay, so these are things that Imam Hanifa says. So look, وَلَا يَصِحُ السَّلَمُ. Salam is not valid except in, according to Imam Hanifa, with 7 conditions. بِسَبْعِ شَرَائِط.
Ustad, you know, this word sharait,
Yeah, it's the Jama of Shart.
okay. In the dictionary it says shurut.
Yeah, you can have Sharait, Shurut as well. تذكر في العقد, which are mentioned in the contract. So like I said, you draw up a contract, you list these 7 things. Jins ma'lum, yeah. Note ma'lum, type. Sifa ma'luma, quality. Miqdar ma'lum, how much. Ajal ma'lum, time. Ma'rifatu miqdar ra'sil mal, need to know the amount of the ra'sul mal. So ra'sul mal is capital. You state in there exactly how much capital is. إذا كان مما يتعلق العقد, when the contract is connected, يتعلق على مقداره, to do with the amount that you want. كالمكيل والموزون والمعدود. Yeah, so if it's to do with makil, measurements, things that you buy and measure, or mawzoon, things that are weighed, or things that are, that's what salam is in most things. وتسمية المكان, and naming the place الذي يوفيه, in which the goods are delivered. إذا كان له حمل, when the items have weight. So if the items have weight, yeah, so you need, no wait, mu'una means it has a burden. So if you're ordering like 10 tons of something, you are not going to get 10 tons in the back of your boot. Yeah, you're going to have to make provisions for that. So if they say, right, right, we're going to charge you extra for delivery, that's fine, as long as you got it in the contract. Yeah. Okay, what does Sahibain say? Sahibain don't agree with the last 2 points. قال أبو يوسف محمد رحمه الله لا يحتاج إلى تسميته. It is not necessary to specify رأس المال. رأس المال you don't have to mention in the contract. So does that mean that it's not mentioned between imtiyaz and shakil? No, it is. Common sense would tell you you have to know how much you're going to pay for it. But it's just saying, if it's not mentioned between them two, if imtiyaz just takes out money and hands it over, does that mean the contract will not go through? No, it will go through. إذا كان معين, so long as it's specified. So long as, just like any contract, you go to buy a chocolate bar, so long as it's specified 50 pence or whatever you give between the 2 people, that's fine. So you see, they're actually both saying the same thing really, but Imam Hanifa is making it more formal, because you don't want any sort of room for any arguments, disputes, and in today's times this seems to be how we run businesses. Yeah, if you're buying stuff, you have everything written down in details, receipts, everything, so that it doesn't cause argument. Online, you buy something, everything's put down, tells you everything, all the details. And the second point, la ila makan at-taslim, you don't need to know the place. Yeah, so where should it be delivered then? If imtiyaz and Shakil are doing a transaction in Aston, right, and it's supposed to be delivered on May the 25th, where does Shakil legally have to deliver it?
Where you did the contract.
Where did the contract? So exactly where the contract took place, that's where he has to deliver it. Yes, if they both, after the contract, he phones you up and says, you know, I've got the stuff, where do you want it? Or can you bring it to this place? That's fine. That's outside the contract. That's not necessary legally. Shakil doesn't have to do that, but out of goodwill, if he wants to do that, that's totally fine. Does that make sense? Just like if you go to the shop, your friend owns the shop, you phone him up and say, you know what, I want to buy some chips. Can you bring it to my house? Yeah, don't worry, I'll bring it to yours. It's not part of the contract, but it's just something which they both kind of mutually agree to.
Can't you effectively reconcile both of these by saying that the side banner effectively saying that the starting point is you deliver at wherever you entered into the contract, but in theory you could agree a different location as long as you specify it. This is what Imam Abu Hanifa is saying.
Okay, so Sahibain would say basically that it's not needed for the contract to be valid. You don't need to mention where it needs to be delivered.
Because the default position is, if we agree here, I deliver it here.
But Imam Hanifa says, no, you have to mention exactly where you want it to be delivered.
Even if it's to be delivered right
Even
here.
if it's to be delivered, it has to be mentioned. Imam Hanifa doesn't want any sort of discrepancy in a contract. He wants it to be crystal clear, and his point makes sense because you only realize this when you're dealing in big business. Yeah, when you're dealing with big business, you realize and you think to yourself, you know what? You know, I need to sort this out, I need to sort this out. Because even the small little details can accumulate to large numbers later on.
Why haven't Sahibain taken this position? Why not? Is there like another hadith that they've kind of used?
No, there isn't like anything. These points are not like, there's not like a hadith that says 5 things. They've understood this based around general contracts.
So what would happen if you took Sahibain's position and the contract doesn't state it, and then there's an argument between the two parties?
So then they go to judge, and whatever position the judge is on, he's gonna and usually it's on Imam Hanifa's fatwa. Fatwa is on Imam Hanifa's position. I mean, in today's times, how do deliveries happen? Do you state where?
Sometimes you can get a landlord coming here buying a machine. The next thing you know, he wants you to deliver 10 miles away.
So how do you sort that out?
Well, sometimes you just have to.
Yeah, I mean, just free, you know, free of charge. He'll just tell the guy, where do you want it delivered? Because he knows a good customer. Or sometimes you want to keep that customer. But sometimes it's just like, you know, you got to mention exactly where you want everything.
Yeah, like B&Q, you have to give the address, and if it's outside certain mileage, they'll say we don't deliver.
Yeah, like that. Okay. Okay, so let's just stop there then, because then it's a new part. Okay, everyone, any questions?
I just wanted to ask, you know, the main function of Sulam is, so if I was to buy apples, I say I'm going to buy these apples, I pay you the money, and I get them delivered later. So if Arif did that, for instance, with the meat, you went to buy the meat, if you pay there and picks up the same day, that's normal day. But if he said a month later, I'm going to come and pick up this much meat, then would that fall under Sulam then?
No, you can't. Because you cannot do Salam in that kind of...
Oh yeah, so that's one of the things that won't be allowed.
Yeah. So when a transaction is not allowed, what we try and do is we always try to fit the transaction onto something else, which is allowed.
Oh, okay. So then you fall under different type of...
Yeah, then different type of bait. That's what we try and do. And if we've exhausted all the different types of bait and it doesn't work, then we just say it's invalid. You make it void.
So if I bought, because I've done this before, where I went and ordered meat, and then later on in the day I've gone...
That's fine. That's totally fine.
I haven't paid anything though. I'll pay it for it.
So it's not Salam, that's why.
So
So it doesn't come under Salam. Yeah, anything else?